Okay guys, just returned home from the Chickamauga Elite Series event down in Tennessee, and back at home in my shop here. Obviously got a big mess of stuff to get cleaned up, reorganized. Been on the road for a few months, so it's going to be nice to get reorganized, get the tackle resorted, that sort of thing. But just wanted to go over a few of the baits that that I caught fish with this past weekend at Chickamauga. Finished 19th, so I was really happy with it. Obviously, that's not in the top 10, but it was still a good event. Fishing was tough. I had a really hard practice. I never actually caught 5 keepers any of the 3 practice days, and then the 3 tournament days I ended up catching just 5 keepers each day. So I sort of did it the hard way, but proud of where it ended up. Got some good points, made some money, so all good. But yeah, caught fish on a probably the most different baits in one tournament than I ever have, really. It was sort of junk fishing 101, and I think the tough practice kind of worked out in that I wasn't really married to anything. I kept an open mind, just sort of fished what was in front of me every day, and fished, probably spent half of each day fishing new water. So burned up some time doing that, but also ran into a few nice fish doing that. So it all worked out. A few things. This little crankbait was probably my most consistent fish catcher over the course of the 3 days. I caught 1 or 2 of my keepers and some nice ones each day on this thing, and that's a new crankbait called a Bagley Shallow Sunny B, and it's one they used to have in production, and it hasn't been around for a while, but they're bringing it back. And you can see it has a shallow little lip on it. I got some sharp hooks on there sticking myself, but it'll run about 3 or 4 feet. So I was going down just some sandy rocky banks with stumps, and just grinding this thing along the bottom. I switched out the hooks. Those are some number 6 Gamakatsu G Finesse trebles, the medium heavy ones, so they don't get beat up as fast, and they're strong. They're thin diameter, but they're really strong. I mean, the best hard bait treble hooks I've ever used, razor sharp. But yeah, that bait, it's a good one. It's the first time I've ever used it actually this past week. I only got 3 or 4 of them just before I went down to Chickamauga, and going to be a big part of my arsenal moving forward. They're going to be available in all the new Bagley colors they have for 2022, so check them out. We got a bunch of the crayfish colors, and then some shad colors and stuff as well. As far as the rod goes, when I'm fishing these shallower crankbaits along the bank, you want something in that 7.2 range, not super long, just because it allows you to make a little bit more accurate casts and that sort of thing. If I'm out fishing deep cranks, then I'm going to want to go with a little bit of a longer rod probably. But this is a 864 G Loomis IMX Pro, so it's a 7.2, and I got a video clip. You can see the whole rod loads up when I set the hook. That's what you want with a crankbait. They were, getting it deep. I didn't lose any. But yeah, that was a good bait for me. Made me some money. Chatterbait, kind of catches them just about everywhere. That's just a Z-Man jackhammer with a razor shad on it. So I caught a couple nice ones on that. And if you look at the top 10 gallery from the tournament, I mean, half the guys were throwing a jackhammer around and catching fish on it. Just about everywhere we go, guys are catching them on that. Chatterbait just catches fish. Throwing that on the new NRX Plus chatterbait bladed jig rod. It's an 883. So just, sweet action for throwing these things, and, feather light, beautiful. Shimano Metanium reel, and just straight 20-pound Seagar fluoro. This little guy was throwing on just 12-pound Seagar fluorocarbon, a Brazex. It's pretty good stuff. The other bait that I caught fish on every day, just a Ned rig, always part of my arsenal just about everywhere we go, and that's the big TRD, just on a 3/16 jig head. And you know, I had a couple little flats that had fish on it and on them, and I just dragged this thing around 6 to 8 feet of water and could get a couple keepers every day doing that. Also threw it around some stumps and just places where I thought maybe a fish would be, some docks. But that was a fish catcher. Just about anywhere, anytime now, you know, on the Tennessee River, you almost always got to have a little Ned rig or some sort of finesse bait tied up just to get a few extra bites. I know we're going to Pickwick at the end of May, early June. It'll be a ledge fishing tournament, but for sure I'll be catching a few fish on that thing there as well. And then, you know, in my life, I've never caught a meaningful bass that I can remember on one of these methylate floating worms. And just the way the fish were, they weren't quite spawning yet. I know I heard a few guys say they caught some and saw some around beds, but just before they spawn, a lot of the big females will go and suspend, you know, in front of some of the trees, docks, and they're close to where they're going to actually spawn, but they're just sort of sitting back a little bit, and they're hard to catch. They're kind of lazy, and you could just twitch this worm around in front of some of the trees. And I caught 2 fish on it, but they're both really nice ones. One was almost a 7-pounder on day 2, so that fish, you know, really helped me out a lot. Just throwing that on a 872 NRX spinning rod. That's kind of my do-everything spinning rod. I like throwing a Ned rig, a tube, doing the Demiki rig stuff with it. 10-pound Power Pro. I got a 17-pound Seaguar Brazex leader on there, and then a 3/0 Gamakatsu EWG Superline hook. So it's, you know, this part of my stuff is pretty strong. I want the swivel on there just for a little bit of weight to get the worm down, and you know, it helps sort of add action to this worm as you twitch it around. And then, you know, I use 17 here just because there was, you know, obviously some big fish up shallow and fishing around some cover. I didn't want to break any off. So, you know, I had a couple come up to it, nip at it, didn't quite get it. Maybe they got a little gun shot on the line, but I don't think it mattered a whole lot. That worm's so bright and offensive, and it's almost mesmerizing watching it in the water. So I feel like the fish are probably feeling the same way. But so yeah, so that was cool, you know, to catch a couple fish on that. I had, you know, over the years I've had co-anglers use them, and you know, I knew that it was sort of a thing this time of year, but yeah, it helped me out. And then also throughout the event, I weighed a couple fish on a lipless crankbait, a little rattle bait, and a couple on a jig as well, just flipping it into laydown. So really a mishmash of tackle, but got the job done. We're you know, moved up quite a bit in the points, so that's the goal. I want to be at that Bassmaster Classic in Knoxville next year, and this past tournament, you know, helped us out big time in that regard. So we got about a month off. I'm going to enjoy some time at home. We're getting hammered with a snow blizzard right now, so we're going to be ice fishing still for a little bit, but in a month, when we get on the road again for Lake Fork, I'm going to be ready to go, excited to get down to Texas, and hopefully keep moving the right direction the rest of the season.